There's a popular saying that goes, knowledge is power, where everyone knows the benefits of having more knowledge, where you are given more options to do the things you would like, and generally it increases the amount of opportunities you get in life. So the more knowledge that you have, the more power that you have as well. And one way to get more knowledge is through reading. There are a few initiatives to encourage students and children to read more, yet many teachers and parents are not introducing this. Do they not understand the benefits of it, or are they just going through the motions and not enforcing it? Let's get into it. Independent reading is known by numerous terms: extensive reading, voluntary reading, leisure reading, and the list goes on. Although it is classified as an instructional strategy by teachers and parents who provide dedicated time to students to read books of their choice. It works best when you are assigned a book to read at school and you have your own dedicated selection at home as well. Typically, it also has no questions associated with it or exercises with it until you reach high school. And that is when you are given books to read, whether it be at home or at school, and you are given exercises and questions to respond to accordingly. But it's different in primary school. One of the best ways to get students to become motivated and engaged in learning in general is to increase their literacy skills by introducing independent reading. You want to give them an allocated time to read and a broad selection where they are given the choice to read themselves. However, we do not just want to stand back and watch them read and let them decide exactly when they want to read and if they want to read. That is just an excuse waiting for them to stop reading completely. Instead, what I encourage parents to do is to utilize the school and the local library and encourage them to read at home and introduce reading strategies to make the experience as seamless and as easy as possible. The research also supports this, where in 2015, a comprehensive study by Miller shows that students who read self-selected books benefited from higher comprehension, higher vocabulary, and general knowledge and self-confidence as readers compared to those who did not. I also really like it as a really cost-effective way to get a lot better with minimal costs. As a lot of the viewers that I know, myself included, when I was young, we didn't come from really well-off backgrounds, and sometimes we could not afford books. But you can go to the local library and your school library and borrow for free. So there's not really any excuses that you can think of to say that that is the reason why you're not reading in the first place. I can attribute my knowledge to the wide variety of books that I read when I was young, and it's the exact same thing that I implemented for myself. Yes, I own a few books, but the large majority of the books that I actually read was from the local library and from my school library. I looked forward to borrowing new books every single week, and the library that I went to had a huge collection. There was always something new for me to read, and it was always good for me to continue to improve my skills in that field. This habit has transformed and remained relevant beyond primary school, where in high school, university, and now beyond university, I can use these skills in the workforce and has helped me tremendously. It has also helped the students that my team and I have taught at Bing's Academy every single day as well. According to the New South Wales Syllabus, students must read widely and deeply from among a broad range of high quality, increasingly challenging literary and informational texts. I'm not surprised by this, as the questions that are assessed in primary and in high school are from a wide variety and includes subject matter from multiple topics, including maths and even visual arts in terms of the reading comprehension. Some of it also requires a degree of reading comprehension skills beyond this, making it an important skill beyond just assisting with the English subject. It also helps in terms of the other subjects that incorporate aspects of reading. I'm going to go over 5 key ways you can introduce independent reading to your child if you were a parent or a teacher. The first method is book selection. One of the mistakes parents make time and time again is that they limit the books that their child can actually read. They may have some books at home and they assume that their child will read all the books that they have available. To a certain point, they might actually do that. They'll read the ones that interest them, but will generally not engage with some of the others. And you might motivate them and prod them, hey, you haven't read this book, but they're just not really into it. This is not an effective way. Instead, make sure to continually expose them to new books. And one way to do this is to go to your local library once a week, once a fortnight, and let them choose the books they want to read based on what they like. If you do not want to do that, you can segment the books that you already have at home based on difficulty level, from beginner, intermediate to advanced. And a way for them to identify is if they are struggling in the intermediate section, which is in the middle of the difficulty scale, then there's no way for them to touch any of the books in advanced. They should stick with the intermediate or go to the beginner level books that you have segmented. A reason why this is important to segment is because if you did not segment it, then it will be a mixture of very easy books to extremely hard books. And when a student is reading and going over questions or reading something that's really outside of their depth, they're not going to be interested and they will give up very early on. Instead, we want to develop a long-term habit and we want them to be really interested in reading the books that they enjoy so they can continue reading for potentially many years. Our team also helps our students identify whether a book is too difficult or not. If you read the first few pages and there are many words that the student finds difficult or does not know the meaning of, then that's an indication that the book is too hard for them at this point in time. You do not want them to search up the meaning of every word in every sentence. It's just too hard. Instead, it's probably a good idea to step back in terms of the difficulty and read a book that's a little bit more simpler and more appropriate for their age and reading level. If there are only a few words that are familiar and only a small number of new words that they are challenged with, then this is likely a signal that this is a suitable difficulty. You do not want for them to be able to understand every single word they read. Otherwise, it's too easy. You need a bit of challenge, but you don't want it to be so challenging to the point where they give up completely. They only need to be challenged to a certain degree. The second method is through check-ins. As a teacher, we do routine check-ins with our students to make sure they are engaged with the books that we assign. We do not assign books to every student, but for the students that we do assign books, we do a check-in. Parents can do this as well, where you can have natural conversations with your child about the book. Don't force it like, what are the top 5 things that you're interested in about or you like about the book that you're currently reading? 5 things? That's a lot of things to actually name on the top of your head. That is a bit overwhelming in terms of determining interest. Potentially something a little bit easier, a little bit more natural or organic can be something like, what is your favorite part of the Harry Potter book that you're currently reading? Which part is the most exciting? Or better yet, if you read the book as well, that would make a pretty good dialogue between the two of you to discuss. And generally, the books that teachers recommend, we have actually read it ourselves as well. So we can actually relate to certain segments that they enjoy, and they can actually tell that we have an understanding of what they have read as well. The third method is writing about the book they are reading. As part of our practical application of studying and tutoring, parents and teachers can ask students to write a response based on a creative novel they have read. If they have read The Hunger Games, for instance, how would they write a book interview with the author if they were tasked with that? How would the student create a newspaper article on the book and its success? There are many ways you can assess their understanding of the book and try to make them apply their knowledge in different text types, especially when they're going for tests like the Selective High School exam here in New South Wales or the HAST exam in New South Wales as well. It will allow them to think more critically on what they have read as they have to create a formal response to it. And as a teacher, we are able to assess whether they have read it and appropriately apply the knowledge they have read. The fourth way to introduce independent reading is by showing and celebrating student successes. We keep track of the books that our children and students read. Before, I used to get some students who were a bit weaker in terms of their reading to go on Epic Online, which allows students to read hundreds of free books. Granted, a lot of the books are quite easy in terms of difficulty, so we usually transition students out of the Epic reading program into just reading books in general. But when you are quite young in age or your reading level is very low, then Epic could be a great one because it tells us how many minutes they spent per book to know whether they've actually read it or just skimmed past it super quickly, and the number of books that they ended up reading. So by the end of the year, we are able to see the number of books they've read, as well as the time they've spent on average per book as well. I tell their parents this number and they feel proud and they can celebrate with their child knowing that they have read X amount of books and spent X amount of time. For the older students that are not using Epic Reading, for instance, though, this will be a lot harder. But they can still create a bit of a journal to write down the books that they have read and make sure that they keep a note of that by the end of the year, so we can help celebrate with them. Although I can see how little time they have spent on books as well if it's on Epic. So if they've only spent like 30 seconds or a minute on a book, I know that they haven't actually read the book. They just went through it too quickly. So that's obviously not a good look, but it's very good feedback for a teacher and a parent to know as well. The last way to introduce independent reading for our students and our children is by getting students from the same social group or school to adopt this habit with them. It is so much easier when one student is encouraged to read every day, every other day, and they also know that there are other people in their age, in their friendship groups that are doing the exact same thing. Instead, the people they hang around with in terms of their friends who also read and learn can motivate them and inspire them to achieve great things as well. From a parent point of view, you can get friends and neighbors who might be getting into it. Go to a library as a group. Have a set time after they go to the park and have some sport where your child and their friends go to someone's house and they can read whatever books that they want. We know that independent reading can be harder for children who speak another language at home, but especially here in Australia. Reading English books is an amazing way to be more literate. New research in 2017 shows that learning to read creates a stronger and faster connection in the brain, even in students who are late in reading. This means that students can adopt independent reading even in high school if they did not do the right reading habits in primary to improve their ability to think. Another way that we know that your social group has a big impact on yourself is the selective school system. So for me, when I attended the selective school, I had some friends that I hang around with. Their interests and my interests, my hobbies that I was interested in, we shared a lot of similarities. If I knew that my friends were reading, I would also read. If my friends are going to the movies and playing sport, I'll also go to the movies and play sport. The people around you shape what you do as well, and vice versa, which is why it's very important, if you can, pull the people around you to read and go on this journey to improve your education together. It becomes so much more easier. Although an important part that I do want to say in conclusion is that independent reading is great. It is not a substitute to explicit reading comprehension and writing tasks with a teacher, but it's a great aid on top of what they are currently doing. You should never tell a student to read a book instead of doing extra homework, because chances are they'll get more benefit from completing a writing task or a reading comprehension task compared to just reading. Reading is good as a long-term perspective in creating a great habit and improving those motor neurons in the mind, but it should just be something that you add on top of what you're currently doing. Instead, think of it as an extra tool in class that parents and teachers and tutors can use. In conclusion, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video on independent reading and the methods that I think can be used to implement this in terms of your child and your students. If you had any questions that I did not actually answer in this video, feel free to put it down in the comments below and I'll try to answer it. I look at every comment. If you haven't subscribed to this video, please subscribe, like this video. It's really, really appreciated, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.